Wow, so mark your calendar. We're going to have back-to-back good cruise news days. And today we're going to be talking about the restart of cruising here in the US. And we're going to talk about the possible confirmation that crew members are heading back. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Cruise News Show. I'm your host Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. The big story today, are there indications that crew members are being called back to cruise ships in the United States? I got some compelling evidence. I will share it with you, but first we got a couple other cruise news stories to get through. The first one, MSC cancels April. Now you may be saying to yourself, Tony, isn't that bad news? I thought this was going to be a good cruise news story. Well, I don't think MSC canceling April is any big surprise. They were the last holdout. All the other major cruise lines have canceled April, and so MSC just falling in line, canceling cruises here in the United States. They will resume cruising in May along with Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Disney, all the other biggies are all set to cruise again in May. We're 85 days away from May the 1st, and so it begs the question, will cruising start in May? Is there enough time to get things going? The jury's still out on that one. We continue to look for positive signs. We're looking for a test cruise, but yeah, no big shocker, MSC canceling their April cruises. Before we get to story number 2, I want to sneak in a quick conversation. I talked last week about Norwegian Cruise Line repatriating their crew members back to their home country, and I said that I felt like part of the reason is that Norwegian has been very vocal about having a vaccinated crew, and these crew members that are going home are not vaccinated. A lot of people pushed back and said, well, couldn't Norwegian just vaccinate the crew on board? Unless I'm missing something, the only way that you can get a vaccine right now is through the government. The government releases the vaccine to your local clinic, your local doctor, that kind. I'm not seeing any stories where a scenario where the government would issue 1,000 doses of the vaccine to a company to vaccinate crew members on a cruise ship. So there may be some point in the history of the vaccine where a cruise line could have vaccine on hand to give to crew members. But in the short term, where everybody is struggling to try to get in line for the vaccine, I don't think they're selling it to companies right now. That's my answer to that. And again, down the road, that could change. But right now, I think these crew members have to go home if they're going to get vaccinated, if that is a requirement. I'll talk more about vaccination in the main story about crew members returning to cruise ships. Stick around for that. Now on to story number 2. Story number 2 is an interesting story. It is the battle between shore power and LNG. It's all about the cruise lines working on getting a better environmental profile. If you've been around cruising at all for any period of time, you know one of the biggest black eyes that gets put onto cruising is the way they interact with the environment. And it may not be unwarranted. Cruise lines have been busted dumping waste where they're not supposed to. Anecdotally, you can look at any cruise ship and see the black smoke spewing out into the atmosphere. So it's not really a hard rock to throw at the cruise lines to say that their environmental profile is maybe not the best. Obviously, those criticisms don't fall onto deaf ears when it comes to the cruise line, and they're constantly looking at technology and ways to improve their environmental profile while, controlling their operating cost and still being profitable. It's interesting if you look over the last 10 years, the last 20 years, some of the ideas that have been put forth by the cruise line, and one that's really kind of reared its head again is the concept of shore power. I haven't really thought about shore power before. I'd heard the term, but I've been reading a few articles on it, and shore power is, a quick analogy. Imagine you drive your car home and you want to leave your car on. Well, you could leave the engine on and you could continue to burn gas and you could still have exhaust coming out of your car, but wouldn't it be awesome if you wanted to play the radio or stay in your car and watch TV or whatever you do? The analogy's falling apart, but you could plug it in. That's the idea. You turn off the engine and you plug it into your house power. You're on the grid. RV, probably a better analogy. You, instead of running a gas generator to power the electronics in your RV, if you go to a campsite, you can plug, boom, right into the power that the campsite provides. That's the same concept for shore power, and it's not a new concept. The principle is this: when cruise ships go into a port where they're going to embark and debark passengers, instead of running the engines and spewing that black smoke into the air, downgrading the profile of the air quality in the city that they're parked at, well, maybe they could just turn the engines off and plug it into the power grid. And like I said, the conversation's been around for a while. There are some major cruise ports that have that ability, and many cruise ships are being built with the ability to plug into shore power, especially new cruise ships. So again, a conversation that's been in the works for a while. Juneau, Alaska, they've had the ability to go on shore power since 2001. About 10 years ago, Port of Miami, the busiest cruise port in the world, they had the conversation about it makes sense to go to shore power to reduce emissions in Miami. But since then, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of movement on it. Shore power is more expensive. This is an interesting concept. First, you have to do the improvements at the port to allow cruise ships to hook into the power grid. The cost of that, not insignificant. It's in the tens of millions. But if you think about things, you know, cruise companies spending $200 million on a new cruise terminal. Another cost component for shore power is the amount of money it costs to be on shore power. Interestingly enough, shore power being connected to the power grid at a port is about twice the cost of just running the engines. And so cruise lines have to struggle with the fact that they're going to have to spend extra money to fit their ships for shore power. They're going to pay more for power when they're at the port, but it does improve their environmental profile. So 10 years, that's a long time for the Port of Miami. Why the feet dragging? Well, I think the feet dragging has to do with another technology that's becoming prevalent in the cruise business, and that is LNG fuel, liquefied natural gas. It is a different form of fuel that can power cruise ships, and its emissions profile is drastically better. So now presented with two options, two technologies that reduce the emissions footprint for the cruise ships at port, and LNG would reduce the emissions footprint for a cruise ship at sea. Where do they invest? Which technology do they invest in? It seems to me that LNG is winning that battle. We see Port Canaveral now building a new cruise terminal specifically to fuel LNG ships, and LNG cruise ships are starting to be produced more and more. So to put a bow on it, sure, shore power, the emissions are better, but the cost is more. And so the evaluation here is the cost worth it? Do you get enough bang for the buck with LNG that you don't go all the way to shore power? I really do feel like that's what's playing out here. And either way, it's a good deal, right? So if we're looking at cruising 5 years from now, if we're looking at cruising 10 years from now, the way they position themselves with their environmental policies, it's going to be huge. And so for one, I like the fact that they are mindful, the leadership there, exploring different technologies to get a better environmental profile while continuing to maintain, cost standards, profitability. It's interesting to see it play out. And I know it's not something that many of us think of, but I did find this conversation or this battle between the technologies super interesting. Now the big story, crew members returning to cruise ships in the United States. Before we get there, let me take a quick second to invite you to subscribe to this virtual cruising community. Be a part of Lido Loca. Be notified when all the new cruise news and cruise updates come out. You do that by hitting the subscribe button with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these shows. Much thanks in advance. Okay, here's the deal. Here's the anecdotal evidence. There is a cruise vlogger out there that works on a cruise ship. His name is Chris Wong. We've gone to Chris Wong many times to see what's going on. He works for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, and he released this video yesterday. Time to go back, ? Well, I've watched the video. I would encourage you to go watch the video, see if you get the same takeaways from it that I do. And the thing he starts off with is, hey, I got a letter from the cruise company that I work for, and they told me that I need to report to the cruise ship on this date. Now, in the past, he's worked for Royal Caribbean. The assumption I'm making is that he's still working for Royal Caribbean, but he says right after that he can't say which cruise ship, he can't say what the date is, but he gives some hints along the way. In the first 30 seconds of that video, you may be going, well, where did you get called up at? Are you going to the Mediterranean? Are you going, to Europe? Something like that. But he gives some clues. So first he talks about some of the challenges that he's facing. He lives in Liverpool in the UK, and one of the prerequisites for him to get back on a cruise ship is he has to go get a medical exam to cruise. They do that in London. He lives 200 miles from London, and right now that country is on lockdown. He also talks a little bit about vaccines and uncertain whether he will be required to be vaccinated. Not sure how he's going to get vaccinated. He lays out a lot of things. I don't want to give away the whole video. Go check out Chris Wong's video. Near the end of the video, he says there's a lot to figure out over the next couple months, and then he talks about trying to get to the United States. So let's think about that. We're 85 days away from May, 85 days to when cruising could restart again. He's talking about possibly a 60-day period to get all of his ducks in a row to head to the United States. So that's a good sign. It may not necessarily be a good sign for May, but if we can get crew members populating cruise ships in the next 60 days, I think 30 days after that, within those next 30 days, you may see test sailings, and then within 60 days, you may see cruises. Again, this is just me looking at the situation, taking that anecdotal evidence. Chris in his own video is very careful to caution people that this could change. The next day they could get an email saying the plans have changed. But excitingly, for right now, somebody that's really high profile on YouTube, that's a crew member, saying, I'm getting the call back. And I'll link that video in the first comment. Please check it out. Tell me what hints you found in that. But it does seem like he's saying that in the next short period of time, that he will be heading to the United States to get on a cruise ship. The big outlier there that's interesting to me is the conversation about vaccine. We haven't heard anything official from Royal Caribbean. We haven't heard anything official from any of the big cruise lines. So it's going to be interesting to see what the vaccine profile is. But seemingly, if Chris is getting called back to cruise ships, a lot of other crew members have to be getting called back. Also, that is exciting. That is another step in the right direction. I'm feeling better and better about some cruising in 2021. So yeah, crew members coming back to cruise ships in the next few months in the US. Good stuff. Couple questions for the comments. First, are you a crew member? Have you gotten called back? Is that some information you could share with us? And secondly, what do you guys make of Chris's video? What do you think the timeline is? Do you think we'll see some cruising in May, June, July? Leave a comment below. Thank you so much for watching the show today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please show your support by hitting the like button. This is Tony with Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.